Aici să văd dacă există termeni ca și motivare, dacă poți motiva sau doar să creezi contextul pentru a fi cineva motivat. Și uite așa am ajuns la ultima prezentare din conferința noastră. Anunțurile organizatorice pot să le fac după ce prezintă Gloria? Mulțumesc! Am o echipă de organizare care îmi spune ce trebuie să fac, când trebuie să fac, mă și corectează dacă zic ceva ce nu trebuie să zic. Așa că nu o să mai insist mai mult, o să dau cuvântul Gloriei. Poate aș mai adăuga un singur lucru. Cândva, noi două am lucrat la aceeași companie, o companie americană de dezvoltare software. Dar asta se întâmpla mult timp și întâi a plecat ea, după aceea am plecat eu și drumurile noastre au mers în paralel. Eu am mers pe training și consultanță, ea a mers pe consultanță și training și ne-am întâlnit absolut întâmplător. Deci eu vreau un speaker bun pentru conferință și am cerut la comunitatea Agile, măi, dați-mi o referință, spuneți-mi de cineva. Și așa ne-am căptușit cu Paul aici și așa am reintrat în discuții și în vorbă cu Gloria. Nu o să stau mai mult, ci o să-i dau cuvântul. Gloria, please.
I have no idea what she said. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm surprised you're here. Isn't it Friday night at 5:30 or something? Aren't you normally on your way home and things like that? Well, I'd like to thank Simona. No, you're not? Thank Simona for the invitation. As she mentioned, I'm Gloria Miller. I actually really don't know what else she said. I live in Germany. I've been in Germany about 20 years. I am 52 years old. I graduated with a computer science degree in 1985. Anybody born from then? And now I spend my time as a consultant doing project management consulting. Yeah? And having worked in a couple software companies, I worked at SAS, SAS Institute, on the consulting side, but also managing some of the development efforts. Some of the outsourcing efforts as well, so that's quite fun. And what I've just recently done is I decided to study for this exam here, PMI ACP, yeah, Agile certification. And when I was studying, I found there were so many different opinions about what was Agile that I said, I can't find my way in all this information. If I were to start a project tomorrow, what would it really look like? And so I decided just to write my notes in the book. So the book is 442 pages. Those are just my notes. And what I thought I would do today is just talk to you a little bit about some of the challenges, yeah? And more from the point of view, because I've heard, even though I didn't understand it, you've heard a lot about challenges today, more from the point of view of what are some of the management practices, management techniques you can use to address those challenges. Is that interesting for you guys? Yeah? Okay. You know a little bit about me, I'd like to know a little bit about you. Can you stand up if you've been doing Agile projects for more than 1 year? Okay, so I suspect all of you can probably tell me, don't sit down yet, stay. You can probably tell me a little bit about being Agile. Can you now sit down if you've been practicing Agile for less than 5 years? Less than 5. Okay, so we've got some people that can also help you through every challenge you possibly had. Okay, anybody more than 10 years practicing Agile? Okay. Okay, so I'll tell you a little bit about my experiences. What I thought I would do first is just talk a little bit about some of the steps of going Agile, very, very briefly, because I really want to get into the challenges. And then a little bit about successes, just because I don't want to just do failures, so I thought I would do a few successes. What are some of the metrics? Then talk about some of the failures and challenges, and then behind that give some examples of management techniques you might use to address those. So that's kind of the presentation. And because I want to leave a lot of time for discussion, I won't try to labor the point too much. Everything that I present here is described in the book, and I think you'll get an electronic copy of the book, so you can take the time and read it and enjoy it on a Friday night. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing, okay, what are some of the recommended processes? Since you're all Agile, we could probably pretty much skip over this. But what I found is that people are very dogmatic sometimes about going Agile. They decide, we're going to go Agile, and that means we're going to go Scrum. Or we're going to go Agile, we're going to go XP. Well, I think the problem's slightly different than that. If you are in any organization today, you got to be dynamic. You know? You got to be able to adapt to change. And that also means not sticking to any one dogmatic kind of approach. So the first question is, why are you Agile? What's the business case behind it? What methodology are you using? And it's not normally only one. It could be one or it could be two, depending on your situation. Or it could be something adaptive, so it doesn't have to be dogmatic. Educate your management team and leadership team. What's the #1 challenge that we all face? Management buy-in. They don't understand. They still want the same old reports, right? So you actually need to take a step to kind of inform them on what's going on, because without their support, it doesn't work. Yeah? And I think this is a step a lot of people skip. So we need to educate them. Then the next for me is define what is success. Yeah? I hear about the definition of done. Sounds great, right? In the team, if you decide the definition of done, and your customers or your sponsor or your management has a different definition of done, what is your life going to be like? It's going to be extreme hell, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss. So the question is, define the definition of success together, right? Define what that means. What does it look like when we say we're actually done? And that can be a process in and of itself, but I suggest that's the next step. Okay, set up the infrastructure. If you're in the software development field, how successful will you be with a short 2-week iteration or 2-week sprint if you don't have some kind of automated testing, continuous integration? That's not going to be very successful. So I think the idea is also to consider the kind of infrastructure you need to be Agile, right? And make those investments in that infrastructure. So that's another recommendation. Then get management to change what they ask for in reports. Yeah? So that's the next step. And then go ahead and implement. And always hold your retrospective, look at what worked, what didn't work, and change it if it doesn't work. So it's my quick tour on going Agile, okay? There are a couple things I would suggest that you not do, and I've seen it happen in a couple places like AOL when they tried to go Agile. They bought an Agile project management software application, and then going Agile came all about implementing that application. Yeah? Yeah. So actually, my suggestion is if you're thinking about going Agile and you're not already Agile, you do everything manually for the first couple iterations, manual reports, manual charts, manual everything. And then after you understand what it really means and what you really need, then think about what kind of software you need to support it. And then confusion. Keep the confusion down, avoid it. I've also seen a lot of cases where people want to go Agile and they kind of keep a lot of the old practices and the old management structure and the old reporting change and then try to do a little Agile on the side. It's very confusing. I suggest you not do that, okay? So that's going Agile in a nutshell. That's the 5-minute version. Now, let's talk a little bit about projects, project success, and what that means. The chart you have on the wall there is coming from one of the PM journals. And we look at a project. That's normally where we have our start and our end date, and our team is working to build something, right? We produce a deliverable. That's the output, the outcome that we expect. And generally, when we talk about project success, you're only normally talking about this little phase right here. You know, did we deliver on time? Was it the right quality? You know, was it in budget? But actually, that's just the project performance. That's not project success. Project success starts over here when you actually take whatever you delivered as an outcome, put it into operation, and people start getting the benefit from it, right? Or you start feeling the impact in the organization. Okay? So over here is where project success actually starts. Otherwise, it's just project performance. So let's talk about Agile and project performance. Since you talked about it all day, we don't have to touch it too much. But I would say, based on everything that I can see, everything that I've experienced, being agile, not a specific agile methodology, but being agile has a high benefit for project performance, right? What we know is 84% of the people that implement it say that they can adapt to changes quickly. Is that your experience? I didn't hear a yes there. Kind of. So some sort of nodding. Do you feel you can adapt to changes? Okay, so easier. I would agree with that. So that pretty much works. The other thing is reducing risk. And here, reducing risk is more about reducing risk of delivering features that aren't needed, having longer running cycles, so being able to stop projects quicker and things like that, reduce risk. Increase the productivity of our teams, okay? If you get a lot of smart people in a room working together, they can actually get something done, okay? But a lot of projects are not that small, are they? So anyway, increasing the productivity, and then having better collaboration with the people that want the solution. So we all know the benefits. You've heard them all day. However, what about failure? Have any of you ever been on a project that failed, an agile project that failed? Yeah, okay. My first extreme programming experience, around 2000. Working for a software company that had a really, really nice benefit for its employees. One of the benefits is everybody gets their own office. Yeah? Have you ever tried pair programming with people not being able to be in the same room together? Yeah? Okay. We had the idea of the daily stand-ups, which was good, but it was more, people got to pick and choose what they wanted to do, and if they didn't really want to do anything, they didn't have to, right? The product owner had no clue, He could not, for the life of him, create or reconcile a backlog that we could use. The market was asking for things, and he just could not get it together, right? So effectively, you got a bunch of people that were more or less doing whatever they wanted to do. The customers, yeah? They actually wanted to collaborate with us. They wanted to work with us, and we're like, no. So let's just say that project was not a success. Okay, so that was that. There are failures as well. This is from the version 1 study that comes out every year. This is the 7th annual one, and some of the reasons that they say that there are projects that fail in Agile. Okay, and basically, since I've been here a couple hours, I've heard all these points pointed out as the main reasons for failure: cultural failure in the organization, lack of transitioning the culture. People don't understand Agile. So those are the things you've been talking about. However, based on everything that I've seen and researched in terms of preparing the book, I would say that Agile projects do not fail more than any other project. Okay? They also deliver benefits, but so do traditional projects. So it's not like everything has to be Agile to be perfect. But they don't fail any more than any other methodology. So what are some of the problems and the challenges in the Agile world? I found a lot. There were quite some. I just grouped them into 4 groupings, just to make the presentation only last an hour, not a full day. But basically, you can categorize them as getting buy-in from management, getting buy-in from the customers, and getting buy-in from the team. Okay? Because not everyone wants to be Agile. Not everyone wants to see their progress on the wall every day, right? Not everyone wants to demonstrate their work every couple of weeks. So even the team, you have to get buy-in from them. Day-to-day operational problems. Just a backlog that is just messy. You know, there's just a lot of stuff in there that you don't want in there, or the priorities are not that great. Things like that. So there are day-to-day problems as well. Communicating is a challenge, particularly if you have a distributed project. And almost every project I've ever worked on has been a distributed project. Okay, so that's a normal thing. Changing the culture of management or the organization is a challenge. Changing the mindsets of people, right? You know, the idea and concept that you don't do a large requirements document in advance. Changing that mindset is a huge thing. And then just experience, making it work the first time, okay? So in those 4 categories, I thought we could talk about some of the methods that you might want to use to address them. But the experience one, I won't talk about that at all. I mean, you guys are experienced. You know, you do the training, You do the work, you do the first 3 iterations to really figure out what it really is. So there's not a lot I can say or add to that, but we talk about the rest. These are all the things behind those though, right? And there are quite some problems there. So basically, just external pressure. If you're working with other parts of the organization that want you to stay waterfall, right? That's a problem. Customers not wanting to sign off on things. So basically, they don't want to sign off because then you might say you're actually done and they might not get the next feature on the list. So they're not going to sign that off, right? They're not going to say in that review that it's done. Big visible charts are intrusive. Actually seeing things on the wall, that's invading my privacy as an employee. I don't want that to happen. Right? So there are things like that that happen as well. Okay. In this category, we've got just basically backlog issues, day-to-day, keeping it up to date. Backloading testing, meaning still kind of running a waterfall process inside of an agile process, and therefore the documentation and the testing are at the very back end of the process. And oh my God, we didn't get everything tested, so it's got to go in the next week. And this whole process just keeps going, right? So that's also some issues. Doing effort estimates, complexity. Sometimes projects are just complex. They're very difficult, right? So those are day-to-day things that you have to deal with in order to deal with Agile. Then we have all the cultural things over here. Changing the mindset of the management, changing the mindset of the team, communicating between the development teams and the product owner, communicating with QA and development. So lots of communication and cultural problems. Okay? So those are the kinds of issues that I found that people face. How does that fit with your personal experience? More or less, did I miss anything? Yeah? What was that?
Probably.
Probably, yeah, you're probably right. So those are the kinds of things that we have. So what can we do about them? It's kind of hard to see that color, isn't it? I can't imagine what your life looks like over there. Yeah, okay. So I've identified some things we could do about it. And these are the things I wanted to talk about. Basically, in each group, there are different things that you can do. Based on my experience, basically, the Agile coach or leader has to be kind of an adaptive management style. So I thought we could talk about that, and I have some points on that. Selling this idea to the customer that they will get the features that they want. So selling what is the minimal marketable component that they need. I mean, selling to them, not telling them, but selling the idea of the concept to them. In your budgets and your processes, having kind of a functional contingency. So that's another thing. Being very innovative in terms of the way that you get the requirements out of the customer, that you get them to prioritize things. So using innovative approaches is another solution. Actually employing Agile testers. I suspect you all do that. You have specialized Agile testers in the team that know about testing Agile with the continuous integration and the different methods there. Not everybody does, by the way. And having your Agile automation. The other thing I find when people first started going Agile is they don't actually change the way that they document their requirements. They still kind of do it as requirements, but call them stories. So they're basically looking completely at the way that you document stories and requirements differently, and having a tight link between a story and testing. So I find that as a key. And the overall specification. Choosing the right methodology for the job, not just assuming that the one you're currently using is the right one. So those are some of the things I thought we could talk about in terms of how you might address those problems. Okay. All right, so let's start with choose the right methodology. How many have seen the Stacy diagram? Pretty much everybody that's been in the Agile. Okay. So basically, the Stacy diagram and Brenda Zimmerman have done a lot of work about complex and complexity and chaos. Yeah. And this diagram just says that basically when you're doing something, you're either kind of pretty sure about what you're doing, close to certainty, or you have no idea what you're going to do, right? Okay? The other thing is with people, they either kind of all agree on what has to happen, or they're far from agreement, right? So depending on where you are in that kind of quadrant is going to have a large impact on the way you might want to structure your project. So basically, if everybody agrees on what has to be done and you've got a lot of experience doing it, why wouldn't you just stick with your old traditional waterfall methodology? You should, actually. That's the recommendation. I've seen people, project team of 4 people, one is a product owner, one is a scrum master, 2 developers, trying to apply Agile when they really all know what they need to do. I mean, if you know what you need to do, you've got a structured approach, just do that. So that's kind of in this rational zone here. Yeah? That's where that fits. I've also worked with a lady when I was at SAS that had a highly complex topic area, right? But she was always able to convince people that as an approach, we're going to go with this waterfall approach, and you're not getting any changes until you use it the first time, right? Use the solution the first time, because something innovative that they don't know what they want until they see it, but then they kind of want you to change it before they see it, and then they keep changing it, and then at the end of the day, you change it back to what it would have been. Yeah. So her policy was, we're going waterfall, you're getting this, I'm delivering it to you in a month, okay, so in an iteration, but you don't get any changes until the first time you see it, right? But it's still kind of a waterfall approach. So waterfall could make sense. It could be agile in that sense. So it really depends on where you are. Then on the other extreme, you kind of have nobody agrees on what you're going to do, how you're going to do it, and I try to stay out of that world, so I can't give you any experience on that. But the agile world kind of fits here in the complexity zone. And what you need for that, though, is you need kind of something people don't think about. You need to get people together and collaborate. That's okay. That's documented. But you also need conflict, right? The whole point is to get those conflicting views and those conflicting roles together and actually come to a decision. So if you've got everybody really already agreed on what they're going to do, and it's just the development team, then, you know, do you really need Agile as Agile is defined there? It's just much more of a different way of doing task management than it is really Agile. So Agile kind of fits here, you know? So basically consider the environment that you're in before you actually select the methodology. The other thing is, if you're in an environment that's highly political, yeah? Meaning you might kind of know what needs to be done, but there's going to be a lot of politics around it, you might also want to stick with the structured approach as well. Okay, for the same reason that basically you won't get a single product owner that's owning the backlog. There'll be multiple people that want to have an opinion. So even if it's what they wanted, they're going to want to challenge it, right? So again, you just have to consider where you are. And since I saw the last presenter talk about all the different methodologies, you yourself know there are lots of options for Agile methodologies. There's not just Scrum, right? Okay, it's the most popular clearly, but there's also extreme programming, Kanban, DSDM, and feature-driven development. So it's a matter of choosing the right one depending on what it is that you want to do, okay? I generally actually tend to like feature-driven development more than I like anything else. I'm usually working in large, complex projects. They're also usually fairly distributed. There are many different opinions, highly political. So I tend to go even more with FDD than I do with Scrum. Yeah. So it just depends. Okay, so that was one of the things. And that was to help with this whole idea of getting people to change their mindset and change their culture. It's about applying the right methodology. Then the next topic I thought I could cover is leading and coaching the team. Yeah? How many of you are actual Agile coaches and team leaders? One person, 2 people, 3 people? Okay, so a handful, not everyone. Yeah? What I find is with Agile coaches, basically we take the project manager and we call them the Agile coach, or we take a team leader and call them an Agile coach and don't tell them what an Agile coach is. So, I think that's very unfair. And just sending you to Scrum training, by the way, is not going to make you an Agile coach, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so this is coming from Hershey and Kenneth Blanchard, and it's situational leadership, okay? And they've developed a quadrant that says basically, depending on 2 things, one, the leader, and the other, the follower, so the team member, they have different levels of maturity and there are different expectations depending on where the team is, right? So one is, do they need low guidance on what to do on the task or high? And then the other is, do they need very little support or a lot of support, right? And a lot of that depends on the team members themselves, okay, which is why you see the R's here. You know, which is called the follower. Are they able? Are they willing? Do they have the capability? These are things to consider, okay? And if they are unable and unwilling to be agile, what should you do with them? Yeah? The point is, then the agile coach or the team leader has to do something completely different than if they're willing, but just don't know the skills, right? So effectively, you got to kind of adapt your management style, your leadership style, depending on the people that you have in the team, depending on the maturity of the team, rather than just applying one size fits all. Okay? And first, starting out, basically the leader would need to be providing some instruction and kind of supervising and maybe helping design the task board, maybe helping them to understand what needs to be done, coordinating to make sure they understand what the stories are, what the scope should be. That might be at the early stages. Yeah? However, once they're able, and have the experience, you would approach it a completely different way. Right? So once they're able and willing and confident, basically then you can be what we actually think of as an agile coach, just kind of facilitating and coaching and having that self-organizing team, right? But if you start out trying to have a completely self-organizing team when they don't know what they're doing or don't have the experience, it's very difficult, right? So the main thing is, as an agile coach or a leader, we actually need to understand where the team is and where the team members are, and then adapt our management style depending on that situation. So rather than have a one-size-fits-all kind of management style. Okay? So that's one thing about being an agile coach versus a leader. All right? As a leader, you need to stay out front, make sure that you're aware of what's going on, and then coach the people depending on where they are in the situation. So that may be something that could be interesting to you if you're having the challenge of team members and or product owners and or stakeholders that are not actually where you want to be. Another thing that might help is really helping people to clarify their thinking, or even you to clarify your thinking. And this comes from Edward DeVoto, who is a guy that thinks that thinking is actually a task. It's something you have to actually plan to do and do, right? So he came up with this idea of the 6 thinking hats. And basically what it is it's a very good way of just structuring your thinking and getting clarity onto a situation, right? So the different colors of the hats mean different things. Well, the white is, what are the real facts and figures of the situation? Yeah? What is it? What is it? Red is much more about emotions and intuition and things like that. Black is, what are the negative things? Tell me why it won't work. Yellow is, tell me why it will work, so the constructive aspect of it. Green is, let's brainstorm and get some new ideas. And then blue is kind of the management, how do we get from here to there? Now, how many of you have used this technique before, the thinking hats? Okay, you guys are pretty clever. So you can maybe explain it to me a little bit better. So I give you an example. I was on one project where we had to, basically it was a project with 4 work streams. 3 were functional work streams, and one was an architecture work stream. Okay, around, I would say around March, we realized we needed to upgrade the architecture platform in order to do some of the capabilities we needed to do on the functional side. So we figured that out in March. The new product that we needed to upgrade to was coming out on the 1st of June. And we wanted to go live 15th of August. Okay. What do you think the team said when they heard that? They said, forget it. It's not possible. Why are you even thinking about this? And oh, by the way, it's the first release of a product. We never go live with the first release of a product. What are you thinking? So in order to clarify our thinking, basically using this kind of technique, we were able to do that. So what are the facts? The facts are basically the product's coming out on the 1st of June, meaning that by end of July, we have to have a go, no go. Are we going to do this or not? I'm sorry, basically end of June, we have to have a go, no go. And that go, no, but in order to get that go, no go, we would have had to test the 3 functional streams install this platform. So those are the facts, right? First of June, get the software, test, go, no go by the end of June, and test the 3 streams. What does your intuition tell you? That's the red. What do your emotions tell you? Because a lot of us have a lot of experience, and we've been in a situation, and our gut tells us it's not going to work, and your gut might be right. So you shouldn't ignore it. You should just say, okay, my gut tells me that a first release is going to be really buggy. You know, my gut tells me that they said it's going to take a week to install, but I think it's probably going to take longer. But you don't have any facts to that. It's just your gut. And you should write that down. Okay? And then the black is write down all the reasons it will not work. Right? And there were a lot of reasons it wouldn't work. One, we had to do all that testing. We had to test every feature in the platform, plus every feature in all the functional streams. Plus we had to organize and align all of those people. So there were a lot of reasons it wouldn't work, okay? Then basically you can turn the reasons it wouldn't work into a plan for how to make it work, right? And that was tell me all the reasons it will work, okay? And then basically using the tell me all the reasons it will work, we were able to line up all the resources that we need to actually get the testing done so that we had had the information to make a go, no go at the end of June, right? So finding out the reasons it wouldn't work, we were able to turn it into what we needed to make it work, okay? And the facilitation was just the planning around how to make that happen. We also decided to get a little bit innovative, and that was where the innovation comes in. First release of a product normally doesn't work. Hey, can we get the developers to get their R&D team on the line with us every day so that we can give them feedback on how this is going and they can maybe resolve some issues for us. So there was some innovation in that as well. So the point of this is just to really help people that sometimes are always negative or always positive, or to help you see the picture, right? Help to clarify the thinking, as an example. And it's also good for your own personal, I use it all the time because normally I'm a black person there, you know, everything's negative. So I use it for myself. So that's another tool for you, okay? So those were basically some tools to kind of help with getting the buy-in from the team members and the customer, okay? Then the next topic is using innovative ideas to engage the customer. Now this is, you guys are probably already using that since you've been Agile for so long, right? Just the idea of using Agile games or different Agile methods to get requirements out of the customers or to get them to prioritize the backlog for you, okay? So here's a book from Luke Holman. He's written a book about innovative games, and these are just some of the games that are listed there. And the idea is to use these techniques to, as I say, prioritize the backlog or get the customers engaged in designing features. So let's pick one. Design the product box. Design the product box is more like in a retail store, you go, you buy your software, and what do? You read the box and see what the features are. It's kind of getting the customers to, based on the features they want, kind of design the box that it would go in that a customer would use to select it. Because by doing that, they're telling you what features are important in the product, right? So that's the idea with that one, to get them to focus in on what's important. Bang for the buck is kind of like Monopoly, giving the customer, 100 euros and saying you have 100 euros and this is what each feature costs. Pick the features that you want, and when your 100 euros is over, you don't get any more features, right? So a way of getting them to kind of prioritize what features are important. 2020 vision is another one. Prune the product tree is just kind of a way of looking at the requirements from a tree point of view. You've got key requirements at the base of the tree, and then you got branches, and then there are requirements hanging off the branches, and there's some big branches and small branches, things like that. So, but the idea being to make it interesting and make the customer engage in actually telling you what's important about the product. And that way you can get their buy-in, okay, and get them to focus on helping. So that's what that's all about. So that's getting the customer and kind of getting them to buy into the process. So we covered the customer, we covered the team. Next is convincing the customer that they'll get all the features that are important. Maybe not all they want, but all the ones that are important. And that's the minimal marketable features and functional contingency. This is a busy diagram, so I apologize for that. But let's start over here. Basically, the idea is, with your Agile methods that you're already practicing, is that you prioritize requirements, right? And that the scope is the thing that's variable, and you keep the time and the budget the same. How many actually practice that? Anybody? Nobody? What do you actually do?
We practice selecting the stories based on some priorities like this, but found out that in some cases, if you give them the possibility to select must, should, could, want, they always select must for everything.
Yeah, okay, so basically you follow that, but at the end of the day, everything's always a must.
Yeah.
Then I would use one of the other innovative techniques to get them to prioritize that. So the idea is to actually do that, and I agree that normally if you tell people it's always a must. The recommendation from the DSDM methodology is that your must is no more than 60% of your total scope, yeah? And that your should have is 20%, your could have is 20%, and your will have is 0. So they've kind of recommended some, weightings there to get people to focus in on how much of the total budget it is. And the idea then is that, you kind of draw the line on this is what we must deliver no matter what within the budget and the time that we have. Okay? So the minimal marketable features. Now, must have, could have, should have is not the only technique that there is. There's also the Kano method, and there's the one I like from Jeff Patton, the story mapping. Who uses the story mapping of the backbone and the walking skeleton? Yeah? The idea there is that, you're laying your cards out and you're laying them out based upon the criticality, so are they hardly ever used or always used, so in that dimension, and then functionally how things are used. And then you got to pick the things that are the top, always needed, as your minimal marketable. These are the things we have to do first, right? Okay, and then everything else is kind of the optional that goes into either your should have or could have. What we know from the data is we know that basically from the DuPont study, 25% of the features that are developed are used, the rest are not. So, okay, you can develop everything, but they might not use it. And we know something similar from the standards report. Now, for my last project, I can also verify that is true, in fact, right? Okay, so we did a lot of work, developed a lot of features, and then we ended up deleting a lot of features because it was too much, right? So effectively, the idea is to sell the idea that this is the things we'll do, Mr. Customer. Yeah, we will definitely do those in the budget and the time we have, no worries, okay? The other things we'll definitely prioritize and try to do, but you're going to create that priority for me, right? Because the big issue they have is, if I sign off, you're going to stop at the line, right? Okay? So the idea is to build some contingency based on this model, but also to have the additional traditional contingency for the project, right? But you have to kind of sell this idea, so you have to sell it. It's not one that's easily accepted, okay? And then you actually have to live it, so your actual planning has to fit with that, right? Okay, so how many of you actually use functional contingency, time contingency, and money contingency in your project planning? Even for Agile projects? Yeah, you actually have to. Because just being Agile doesn't mean all of a sudden you can just do whatever you want and stop whenever the money runs out. It doesn't mean that. It still means we have to deliver. It's just a different way of delivering and prioritizing. Okay? So that's that. So basically we've covered most of the things at the top. The next thing is this idea of trying to deal with some of the day-to-day issues. Tightly coupled stories and specifications. I think since you're doing a lot of already the continuous integration and test automation, you probably have that covered. But the thing I like to do is I like to make sure that, one, we consider what's the best way to write stories, yeah? Because there are different ways of writing it. Some of the acceptance test-driven development I like, the behavior-driven development method I like, behavior bit, how are you going to use it, and then writing the story behind that. I like that because it really focuses on, helps you focus on how you're going to test it and how they're going to use it, right? Okay? So first, focus on how you're going to write the story, which is the backlog item here. And then making sure that the task and the examples are always given for the items that are in the backlog. Most customers are able to give you examples of how they're going to use it. They have Excel sheets, they have other ways, screenshots. They can tell you basically what they're looking for. as a user, right? And if you're using some of the open source testing like Finesse and things like that, then you can basically build that into your testing process. And making sure your test fits that. So for me, when I talk about a requirement now, I talk about a requirement, not like a requirements document as we know it, but talk about a requirement as being those 4 things make up a requirement for me, okay? Rather than previously, what we were doing was writing a big requirements document, and then people try to pick out the parts they need, and you always left testing for last. With this strategy, we try to build the test into the story, right? And then make sure that everything else follows from that. Because if you do that, then you have a better possibility of actually running your testing in parallel to your development, or doing TDD, or doing some of the other things, test-driven development. If you actually just write the story and then try to do all the things later, then testing is always at the back end of the process, right? So the key to making testing integrated and being able to make sure you're able to fit everything into the iteration is to start at the front end with how you write the story and making sure that fits, okay? So that's the idea for me of trying to couple this idea of requirement, specification, and testing from the beginning rather than the other way around.
Some short question. When you say tasks, what do you mean?
The activities you actually have to do to deliver the work, so task, yeah, the work. Yeah, and that might vary depending on if you're using a Kanban, it would be one of your process steps. But if you're using Scrum, you might actually do the task when you do your iteration planning, right? So it depends on the method that you're in. But that's the work you have to do to realize that story. Okay? Are there any other questions? So this is probably the heart of it for me, because if you can get that to work, then you can actually deliver your iterations. Okay. So next is agile testing and automation. There, I think the key is, we know the work from the 2 ladies, Lisa and Janet, yeah? They wrote the book, Agile Testing, so everybody has a book on your desk, I'm sure. Well marked, where you need to be. But the other side of it is that basically, for every iteration do you need every test, right? I think, was it Goko who said that there's kind of a hierarchy of needs of testing, right? You don't need to worry about scalability and maintainability if it doesn't work in the first place, right? So the idea here is that we know all the tests we need to do, and there are different topics. There are tests that just test the quality of the code, that are technical or business facing, and there are end-to-end tests that you have to do once the system's up and running, like security and installability and things like that. And my point is, these are all the tests you have to do, but I would prioritize these tests, yeah? So that in your iterations, you're doing the tests that are relevant depending on where you are in the process, okay? What do I mean? As I said, first, you always have to make sure the software works. So functionally, you know, obviously you need the code quality and you need the feature test, right? Without that, it doesn't usually work. You don't need to worry about scalability and maintainability in that iteration until you know that it works, okay? And then from a hierarchy of need, you kind of go up the next level. What is the things that we have to test? Well, then probably if your first release of the solution is only going to be used by 30 users rather than the 300 that is the ultimate, then I would do scalability testing around the 30 to 60 rather than around 300, right? So actually having a plan for your testing that fits with how people are going to use it and when, okay? Same with security testing and things like that. Well, do you really need to test security at the early stages when there are only going to be one single instance with the 30 users that are using it? Potentially not. So rather than always just considering every test all the time, consider how you might prioritize your test depending on when it's going to be rolled out. So that's the agile testing. Now, everything I discussed there is described in the book, so, right? Almost everything in terms of what I think about that topic, not that it's always right, you have to make it fit your situation, right? So it's not like it's a Bible, it's just, these are the ideas. Okay, so those were the challenges as I saw, and some of the recommendations that I could make to you in a half hour. How am I doing on time? Not good. Yeah. Okay, so there's still a lot more issues there, okay? And that was what we talked about in the introduction, just how to go agile, okay? That was it for me. Basically, you'll get a copy of the book, and I hope you enjoy reading it, and I wish you all the best with your agility. Yeah. Are there any questions? Really is Friday now, right? Okay, thank you very much.